This is Foundry, a brand new addition to 3D factory building games in which you harvest resources, craft ingredients utilizing such, and research your way to the most advanced of technologies. Its infinite, procedurally generated voxel world has room for all the logistical creativity that you can think of. I personally was immediately fascinated the moment I saw the first gameplay trailer and just had to give it a try the moment I could get my hands on it. So, while playing for a small while now, I noticed a handful personal tips and tricks that I wanted to share today. Let's get right into it with number 1. Harvest all surface deposits on the starter nodes. This will make additional room immediately for foundations and drone miners. It also allows you to craft pretty much all of the tutorial buildings without any excessive running back and forth between starter pod and nodes cause you're out of resources. I'm still not quite sure why the collection quests only ask for 100 ore rubble of each. When summing up the cost, we can clearly see that nearly double the amount is required to get to a point of one smelting facility. Oh, also bear in mind that there's another node that wants to be equipped with the same setup. Eventually, when those two facilities are up and running, it is time to fabricate higher tier components. This is also a good point where I'm throwing in tip number 2. Automate important buildings from the get-go. With any automation game out there, it is in many cases a huge time and quality of life feature to do so. Trust me, it is well worth it so you can come back to one location with 600 belts, 800 platforms and 50 sorters ready and waiting to be picked up. Oh yeah, and speaking of belts, here's tip number 3. If possible, use balancers instead of conveyor T-junctions. This has a simple reason called efficiency. Facilities like drone miners may not have a continuous rhythm of placing items on the output belts, which leads to small gaps on the conveyor. Other games like Factorio, for example, got around this problem by nudging the following resource a tiny bit back so that there's exactly room for one more item in between. This sadly doesn't apply to Foundry though, and in such cases where unregular item flow is present, it can accumulate over crafting steps, leading to, in extreme cases, to about 10% slowed production. Oh, and one small thing for early factory building as well. Leave open conveyor ends at production facilities. When I was placing down my first crafters, multiple conveyor ends looked like this. Later I noticed though that by leaving access room around each end, especially if you are yet to familiarize yourself with what new crafting recipes will require as ingredients later on, extensions are much easier to pull off when doing so. Alright, there's one more building tip that I want to talk about real quick, which is number 4. Don't be afraid to connect early power grids together and centralize your power generation. All starting facilities run exclusively on low voltage power, meaning that only floor tiles have to be laid out for every machine to receive the same power from one source. At the beginning of my first world, I tried to place biomass burners where they are needed to avoid making very long 1 block wide power snake connections between platforms. I quickly realized though that by how much effort it costed me to make sure each generator is topped off with fuel and memorizing to check on them once in a while, forming one bigger low voltage grid stretching over a few hundred blocks makes dealing with that problem much easier. In this example, power is coming from these burn generators down here and stretches across the whole field to reach every platform equally. Lastly, tip number 5 will be more of a recommendation than a fact set in stone. I'm talking about the right moment to explore further out and open up new resource nodes. Mainly 2 factors will play a larger role while making this decision. First, how far out do these new nodes lie, and second, how deep are such buried inside the ground. Let's look at a few for demonstration. Over here we have a new xenoferrite node pretty shallow inside of the dirt. Up here is where I built the first machines, and the distance between it can be covered by a longer belt. In this case, I would consider using it as soon as the need for more xenoferrite arises. Now what about this technum ore node? It's about the same distance away from my drop pod as the xenoferrite node, but buried quite deeper. Additionally, I would have to deal with clearing out the water above it as well, so in this scenario I would wait a bit longer before I finally get mining here. To sum up, Many nodes close to the drop port won't be as deep as others, but every node still needs to be evaluated individually to make accurate judgment. For nodes further outside, researching C4 explosives and making a small dedicated assembling line to fabricate those is nearly a must, since these tend to sit dozens of blocks underground. I can for sure tell you that you don't want to mine all of these blocks just with your hand drill. Okay, so far so good. Other methods like long-range transportation setups and larger-scale factory organization will be a topic for another time. If I missed anything important today, let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back next time. Peace!